everybody. Happy last Wednesday of 2021 and welcome to Crew Talk, brought to you by Shoot Stop Video. I'm Bonnie, or Bonnie Marie Williams if you're my agent, or my mother when I'm in trouble. And this is our last episode of 2021, which is kind of crazy to think about. I think it's safe to say we were all so happy to send 2020 away, but how are we feeling this year with 2021 and going into 2022? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Taking a look into the new year with an honest assessment, how we can better ourselves, and if I might add, how we can show ourselves some kindness and grace too. So if you have any questions for our panel, you can type them right in our question and answer box in the chat in here. And I have my list of questions as well, but we always love to ask the questions that you have and what you want to know. So we're going to go ahead and reintroduce the panel that's returned to us here today. And when we do, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you are, and what you do. And would anybody like to go first? Wanted to offer that up. Yay, Chris!
Sure, I'll go first. Why not?
Okay.
So, thanks again for having me on. Great to see everybody. And Happy New Year. So my name is Chris Vaglio, and I am a business mentor that works with creative professionals to help them build a rock star brand, as I like to say, to help them get noticed, feel more confident, and bring in more clients. And my background prior to starting Rocket Growth Agency was I was a video producer, editor for over 20 years. I was a co-founder of Gray Sky Films in Rockaway, New Jersey, before successfully exiting in 2020 and starting my new company, Rocket Growth Agency. So that's a real quick bit about me.
Great. Thank you. Would anybody like to go next? Just open up whoever wants to say hi.
Yeah, sure. I'll go. Oh, go ahead, please.
So we're Peter and Beth Bostwick. We were here last year, and our background is we start companies, and mostly tech companies. We were in the Bay Area, but we just recently moved back to Colorado, which is where I grew up and I met Peter. And we're really all about your thinking and, focusing on what it is that you want in life. So that's what we'll probably talk a little bit about tonight. So Peter?
Basically we're coaches for companies and for individuals to help them get their heads in the right mindset so that they can achieve things that they're excited about achieving.
I love it. Very nice. Jeffrey, there you go.
Well, thanks for having me on, Bonnie. I'm Jeffrey D Calhoun, host of the Successful Screenwriter podcast. I'm also the author of the best-selling book, The Guide for Every Screenwriter, which was listed as one of the best screenwriting books of all time by the Book Authority. And on my show, I interview Hollywood screenwriters, indie screenwriters, producers, directors, actors about how they break into the business.
Awesome. And you've got a sweet baby Yoda back there. I've got the same one in my booth right over there. So, all right. Who would like to go next?
Oh, I guess it's just me, right?
Okay. Yes, that's right.
Hi, my name is Denise Powers. I'm not an expert giver of advice like everybody else on the panel, so I guess I'll be like the guinea pig. You guys can advise me as like your sample. I found I'm a writer and director, and I've done a number of short films. And I've done some documentaries as well. And I just sort of in the pandemic mode last year stumbled upon the Shoot Stop Video webcasts and found this nice community. And it was, I think, in fact, I revisited last year's webcast of the, year in review and how do we go into 2021. And so I remember watching it last year and just kind of refreshed my memory. And so, yeah, I think that's been like really helpful to me in terms of moving forward into 2021.
Fantastic. This is a nice intersection of things that really interest me is mindset and, I don't want to say just positive thinking, but reframing a lot of things and that motivation, but also the industry side of things. So I was really, really looking forward to this and everybody's been really great. So awesome. I have a question that I would love to open up the floor to, because I think this is something that we've all discussed and things that we all have experience with is everybody says consistency is key, right? Like consistency is key if you want to keep going, and consistency is key if you want your goals. But I think a lot of us have a hard time getting started because we see the big picture and we go, okay, I understand I need to be consistent, but what's the first thing I can do to get started so I can be consistent? So I would love to just hear any advice that any of you have, or any experiences that you might have in that, any words of wisdom, anything along that line, because I think that's a great place to get started.
So can I jump in first? Because I feel like what we talk about sets the seed for other things going forward. So we talk a lot about how important your thoughts are. And the question that we keep coming back to again and again is, what do you want? And if you don't know what you want, it's pretty darn hard to be consistent about whatever that is. And so I think if you really start with that, and guess what? That can change. What you wanted last year could be very different than what you want this year. And that's okay. There's no judgment here. This is all about you and what you want. And I think that if you can answer that question truthfully for yourself and really feel what it is that you want and be open to possibilities, that's where you start to build your base, I think, in which to build the consistency.
Love that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really great. Beth, that's really solid advice. I would, to piggyback off that, I think one of the things that I have fallen victim to this many times over, and I just keep coming back to the same thing, is consistency is key. But what we often do, because we're human beings and this is what we do, is we begin to, yes, there's the big picture, and we see all the possibilities, and we begin to already feel overwhelmed before we've even done anything, and before we've even taken that first step. And that oftentimes will create that, like, that, oh God, that feeling that you get of like, this is too much, or, I just can't do this. And, we come up with excuses for ourselves. It's just what we do as human beings. But one of the things that my mentors have continually told me, and I have to remind myself, is keep it really simple. Like, keep it really simple. Start slow, start with the simplest thing, and start there, because it's all about, once you start beginning to do it and get over that first hurdle, which is usually the hardest one, because believe me, there's going to be so many more hurdles. I mean, it's endless. That's life. But just getting past that first one, keep it really simple, and then you can begin to establish a rhythm and a cadence for yourself that fits for you, right? That's also another important thing is I love what you were saying there, Bonnie, is like, everybody says consistency is key, and it's true, but it has to work for you, not what everybody else is telling you, not what all the experts here are saying. We're here to give advice, but all we're doing is sharing experiences of what happened to us and how we've helped other people and seen some of the results. But really, keep it simple and, do what works for you.
That's brilliant. Yes.
Right back at you. Same.
I have to remind myself all the time. I have it written and just keep it simple.
Yeah, I guess for me too, like I don't have so much of a problem getting started. My problem is more the consistency, and in which case it's just a permanent problem, so you just kind of start over, right? So you just remind yourself of what the good habits are, and, attend a webcast like this to, refresh your memory about how to do this kind of stuff. But yeah, in terms of like keeping it simple, just like I find it helpful to break things down into really, really minute tasks. And if I'm having a bad day or a bad week, and every, small task seems big, then I try to break it down even smaller. And then, like sometimes it's even like putting like eat on the list, or, just putting something on the list that you can cross off, just to give you that feeling of crossing something off. And and then just, not beating yourself up if you're not able to achieve this like perfect lockstep consistency. It makes sense that you have these things where you ebb and flow, and maybe, the fact that you're not being consistent is telling you something, and you have to sort of step back and listen to that. Like, what does that mean? Is am I sure that I want this? And what's behind why I'm distracting myself, or why this has been on the list for a really long time, and it just kind of keeps moving to new lists without ever getting crossed off. I think that's what I try to do.
Ooh, So we have, what is it we want, take a step, but also have that self-awareness to take an honest look at what's going on and say, okay, I've had this on here for so long. Why am I not doing it? What's the reason behind that? I think that's really, really smart, because we can say, I want to do this, but if we're not doing it, like you said, Denise, I think there's something bigger at play. If we take an honest look at it, kind of take a step back and go, okay, am I afraid of this? Am I afraid of what will happen after this? Sometimes talking about it with somebody else, which is kind of what we're doing here tonight, can be really helpful for that as well. That's great.
I have an idea.
Yeah. I want to hear it.
I think strategizing is super important, and building off of finding your goals, and everything everybody has said is great advice. One key to consistency that I find is really habitualizing your process. So discovering what your process is, and then making it sacred in a way that when you are doing it, it becomes this habit. For me, with writing, I have a very specific playlist that I use, that I only listen to that music while I'm writing, so that I trigger the mind of, this is what we're doing now. And you can do that with anything. I mean, I know people that when they're working in their office, they have a specific type of aromatherapy that brings them into that space. And so I think habitualizing your process can really help you with that key to consistency.
I'm going to bring a little contrarian to the party here.
What's new?
And it's really all about being present, right? Because so everything you said, Jeffrey, 100% agree. Having a process is wonderful. Knowing what you want is incredibly powerful. But sometimes, especially when you're not sure what to do next, if you could kind of distill it down into being present, into what do I do next, right? Instead of what do I do to get this big vision, is what do I do next? And kind of like I think it was mentioned before, kind of microing it down so that you're really in touch with who you are and what you want to accomplish this minute, right? That's not going to help you with the consistency piece, but it's going to help you get to the point where you can then achieve that consistency. But sometimes I think that's how you start off the conversation. How do you get to that point? And sometimes you have to be in the moment, in the present, in order to make that happen.
I love that.
I'll add just a little bit more. Denise, I think you mentioned it, and I'm not sure that if everybody heard it, but you need to give yourself credit for what you do. You have to pat yourself on the back. You have to say, yeah, you know what? I ate that breakfast. I washed a little laundry. Take credit for these things, because every day you're living your life. And if you don't celebrate what you've accomplished, it's kind of hard, because nobody else will if you don't. So we call it be your own best friend. And that's just so, so important, especially when you're trying to work through what it is that you want to accomplish. So
yeah, I want to just piggyback off of some of that and share like a personal thing with that. I was really into working out at the gym and weights, and then I fell out of that habit. I stopped making it the habit of going every single day. And I think there was some mental health stuff at play. Absolutely. And I got out of that, and I tried to get back into it, and it didn't feel the same as it had. Like in 2019, I stopped going to the gym as much. And when I did, I was miserable. I said, what is happening with this? And I didn't love it the way that I used to when I was in that habit. And I was going at 4:30 in the morning. I didn't sleep a lot. I was going then because I knew if I go now, I can go to work, get it done, out of the way. And it was a way to wake me up and everything. And then I started working from home full time, and I stopped doing that as much. And so 2019, I just didn't go. And then 2020, when everything closed, I thought, how am I going to get back on track? And I tried to do it at home, and I fell out of that consistent habit. And then I had a goal this year was to start working out again. And I said, okay, like, how am I going to do that? What I'm doing is not working. And then I found like an at-home workout program that I started doing in April, and I got everything for it. And I said, as if I can just do a half an hour a day, I don't have to leave the house. Can't really go back to the gym. They're still closed, but now I've gotten back into that habit, and now it's more consistent for me. And it was about, like, even earlier today, I didn't want to do it, but I said, I'm gonna feel better once I'm done. I'm gonna be miserable while I'm doing it because it's warm and I'm sweating and gross and I don't like it, but I will feel better when I'm done. And so just getting back into that habit, and now it's a habit for me. I've been consistent. Does anybody have any sort of stories like that you've applied in your own life or your business, or if it is your health or something like that? I would just love to hear another personal experience with that. And if not, it's totally cool. No pressure.
I don't want to hog the floor, but yes, just like you, we had a gym we had to stop going to, and before we moved, we were very consistent. We had a great workout that we ran through, and it was in the place that we were staying. It was a great place. We could go in and outside all year round. Well, now that we're here in Colorado, it's a lot colder, and we don't have that special space. So it's kind of like now we're trying to reformulate. Okay, how do you do it? So we're kind of in that stage, because it's been beautiful out here until just a couple of weeks ago, and so you can go outside. Well, now it's a little tougher to do that. It's like 15 degrees, and so even breathing out there is not great. So it's like, okay, how do we get this in? So, but you're right, Bonnie. I think the thing that's so important is that you build consistency, but I think part of getting to the consistency is kind of muddling through, if you will, what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and does that make sense for what you want right now today? So
yeah, absolutely. My next, is anybody else want to piggyback off of that? Yeah.
I think tenacity is a big thing to have when you're really trying to form that habit and make whatever that promise to yourself is to keep going. Is you have to be tenacious. You have to have that not quit or not let yourself give up, so that you can continue getting better. I mean, when I first started writing, it would take me, we're talking over 15 years ago, it would take me 8 hours to write a page. Now I can write 30 pages in a couple of days, but that was through really sitting down and not giving up and not quitting and making that promise to myself that I'm going to sit down and I'm going to keep getting better and better. So I think tenacity is definitely something that you have to really harness in order to keep going.
Absolutely.
There's a book I read not that long ago. I think it was called Tiny Habits, and it's about a guy who wanted to go to the gym and work out, and he found himself never being able to do it, and because he always had this big vision of, okay, I'm going to go and work out for an hour and get big and strong and all these big accomplishments. And so what he did is he set for himself, I'm going to have a goal of doing one push-up a day, and that's the top of his goal. All he does have to do is one push-up, and you can do one push-up, right? And then he found that when he got down there and did a push-up, well, sometimes he'd do a couple extra push-ups and maybe do a sit-up and a pull-up or do other things. And it just kind of built and built and built. But he never changed his goal. The goal was still one push-up a day. So you never, it's not like, okay, I ran a mile today, so now the next time I have to run 2 miles or else I'm a failure, right? So it really diminished the whole pressure of continuing to achieve. It just kept it simple, and you did what you can in the moment to make it happen. So to me, that's a very powerful tool to keep your initial goals tiny so that you can achieve more of what you want without the pressure of making it happen.
And that kind of goes back to the whole idea we had of getting overwhelmed with just starting, but doing one push-up isn't super overwhelming. That's something most people can do, just like you said. Yes, Denise, I cut you off. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. I was just going to say that it also keeps the fun in it too. Like one thing that, I'm a manic swimmer. I love swimming. But I live in Paris, where it's really not pleasant to swim. It's like the pools are overcrowded. It's chaos. Nobody segregates by speed. Everybody stands at the end of the pool and talks. It's awful. So I would set these goals for myself, like, okay, I'm just going to go and if I can do 500 meters, that's fine. It'll be a good day. And if I get to the end of 500 meters and like, I'm not completely like frazzled and wanting to kill somebody, then like I can do another 50 meters and then another 50 meters. And so then like each 50 meters that I did on top of the basic agreement, which is a little bit more than one push-up, but because like, I mean, one push-up is a little, like it depends on where you are, right? And so just like, okay, well, then everything is gravy. And it's like, you really feel like, okay, I'm doing this because I'm enjoying this.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm not enjoying it, I stop, and then that's it. And that obviously doesn't work for everything, but for some things it's.
Yeah. Well, it's setting expectations and or not setting them or setting them so low. Expectations I've come to realize of yourself are really limiting. You can have goals and work towards things, but if you have an expectation that you're going to do something a certain way, that really limits you in terms of being open to, just like you're talking about, Denise. I'm going to start with, I'm going to try a basic level of 500 meters. That sounds like a whole lot to me, but it's just like, you start, and then anything above that's gravy. And that's the great thing about reinforcing these things that you want to do, is start with something small and then give yourself credit for that. I got it. And then if you get a little bit more, even better. That's gravy. I love gravy. So much nicer. Just dry bun, whatever.
I would love to piggyback off of that, because I know it's, the new year is coming, and typically people set resolutions of, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to work out. I've done that for a very, very long time. But I would love to ask our panel if you believe in setting New Year's resolutions, or if you don't, what do you do instead or not do? If you call it something different, what is your thought behind that? And expand a little bit on why.
Well, I'll just say, I'll start off, but I don't really set New Year's resolutions as much as I just sort of create the goals I'd like to accomplish in a year, because I don't know, just the word resolution and all that for me, it's never really worked. So I create like, hey, here's what I'd like to accomplish this year. And much like how everybody's been talking about here is pretty much the same attitude that I share. It's like, listen, I'm going to do my best to hit these goals. I'm going to try. I'm going to do the things I'm going to do. I'm going to hit hills. I'm going to hit valleys. But these are the expectations I've set up for myself. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. But I think it's just important to say, celebrate the wins, which is what, Peter and Beth have been talking about, because the wins, no matter how small they are, because usually it's the tiniest things that turn out later on to be the biggest things or have the biggest impact on you. And if you look back and go, wow, I did this panel in January or, end of December, and then it turned into who knows, maybe I started working with 2 or 3 people, or somebody decided to join a group I'm doing, or somebody was able to make a great introduction. But if I hadn't done this one thing, it wouldn't have led to that. That's a huge win. But just the fact of doing like the smaller wins, things like that, I think that's really important. So for me, I think it's however you want to frame it. If you want to call it a resolution, once again, it always comes back to what works best for you. What's the word? What are the things that are going to help you achieve the things you want to do? For me, it's writing down a few top 5 things I'd like to accomplish in the next year. And I feel like that they're realistic, they're obtainable goals. But at the end of the day, if I don't hit them, I'm not necessarily going to oh my gosh, the sky is falling, I'm just going to, pack it in. Because there's lessons to be learned in everything you do. And that's also another huge win. So that's just how I frame it. Like I said, everybody's different. And I think it's a personal choice, honestly, to what helps you get to where you want to be.
Love that. Celebrate the wins. That's a great way of looking at that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it is all about what you want, right? So you can consider it a resolution or a goal, but it's really, and certainly it shouldn't be once a year thing, right? This should be a regular thing where you look at, celebrate, appreciate, have gratitude, and then think about, okay, what's next? What is it that I want to accomplish? What's important to me, and why is it important to me? And then I use that to move myself forward.
Yeah. think resolutions worked against me. I never always felt like I failed, if I use that word. I don't know why. But I think it's okay to change directions. It's I guess maybe the word resolutions feels like it's gotta work. I mean, you gotta do it, and there's an obligation to it, whether you want to do it or not at some point. I mean, maybe in March it's like, wow, I mean, I want to gain weight instead of lose weight or something, So I think that being open and being flexible is what's really important here, because you change. I mean, I'm not the person I was last year. I'm certainly not the person I was 20 years ago. Take advantage of all the stuff that you've learned, because it is all learning. These are all experiences we're having. And I think appreciating them for that and not judging them really is really important to keep yourself moving forward.
I think sometimes I do resolutions and sometimes I don't. So I think I probably will this year. And when I do them, they're like really hyper detailed. And I guess they're more like task lists. Like I break it down again, because it's also a moment to say, okay, is this realistic? Like when I take this like bigger picture goal and I'm breaking it down, is this actually something that could happen, and what is a reasonable time frame for this? And so, but it also includes other things about how I want to live my life, right? So it's not just work related. So it's also, maybe go and get a massage once a month, or, things like that, which I know sounds dumb, but like if I don't agree to do that kind of self-care, it often doesn't happen, or it's the first thing that gets cut out of my life. And I forget how important that is. But like last year, I didn't do resolutions because what I was facing was just kind of a more profound existential crisis. I was between continents. I was in the process of moving from Europe to the United States. It's a move that I had planned on making for a long time and was like 100% behind and really wanted to do it. And then, got caught during the pandemic. And so I was like between continents, between jobs. I had nowhere to live. The person I was living with in Los Angeles told me not to come there because he didn't want me to bring the virus. And so I literally had nowhere to go, and once something like that happens, like there's just really nowhere to go but up. And so I had to sort of make some decisions. Like I understood from the very beginning that this whole thing was something that was going to derail me for not just a couple of weeks, that this was going to be something that potentially affected the next several years, if not, the rest of my life. And so I just had to really think long and hard about where I wanted to be. And ultimately, that's kind of what I dedicated 2021 to, and ended up moving back to France. And so, I took a long time. Like I like what Beth is saying about being open to changing your mind, because I pride myself on being somebody that, like, once I decide to do something, like I stick to it and I set the goals and I make it happen. And, and I was on a project and life changed, and it made me realize that, okay, maybe this is not my priority right now. Maybe my priority is different, and I need to be open to that. So then that meant having to kind of reinvest myself in moving back to Europe. And, and so that's why I didn't bother to set resolutions, because it's like, that's just like enough, right? That's enough for 1 year. I don't need anything else. So
a question for you. Are you happier?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's a trade-off, right? I mean, like there's certain things that I feel like I've had to kind of say goodbye to, or to put on permanent hold, to certain professional objectives that I had, that I was wanting to pursue here. But this just puts me on a different path, that also makes me happy. And and who knows what will be in 5 years, but I guess I was allowing myself to get a little bit self-conscious of like, okay, well, everybody knew I was moving to the United States, that I was going to Los Angeles. I was there like 4 months and then went back to France to do some other stuff and then got stuck there. And so everyone's like, well, what are you doing back here? Like you're not supposed to be here, but you just have to ignore that, I guess, and
you do. It's all about them. It's not about you. That's why I keep it here.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes this overrides things in a not a great way. That this This is sometimes north. This is always north. Your true north is really listening to yourself. And so it's great that you did that, Denise. That's amazing. Good for you.
I like this panel. I have to say that I like Chris said resolutions can be a choice, and I think everybody has great advice. I think it's funny when I follow Denise because we have similar, like, she's like my spirit guide. So when this year with resolutions, it's pretty interesting to me because I've really been focusing on, everybody says ROI, return on investment, and I've really been looking at return on time. I suffered a cardiac event this year, so thought I was dying. Ended up in the hospital, and we've all dealt with loss. We've all lost people. This has been a really hard couple of years, and so after going through that, after saying goodbye to people and not thinking that, thinking that this was it, I came out of that, and I'm still coming out of it, but I came out of that with a different appreciation for time. I've always kind of been the guy who put my head down and just worked and never stopped up to breathe. And I'm sure Beth is gasping at that notion because I've never really sat down and appreciated my successes. For me, it's always been like it's like I'm in the car and my successes are just going by as I'm going forward. So now I've really sat back, and I would say not setting resolutions as much as really trying to take every drop of this life as I can, even when I take days off where I'm like, you know what, today is an Xbox day, sitting down and enjoying that and bringing it in and understanding that is part of restoring balance to this work life that I have, and not being like, oh, I was just being lazy and unmotivated. Like, no, you need to have the downtime. So I really am looking at return on time and what am I doing that I'm getting the most out of this life from, because really it is so fleeting. So I don't mean to be the dude that brings everybody down, but I am the writer of the group, so I think that's on brand. But that's my honest answer. I'm keeping it real.
Well, and I think, Jeffrey, you bring up a really, really good point. I just think this is so important relative to the pandemic, because what you're talking about, the return on time, I think is something that a whole lot of people have been doing in the last, I'd say, 12, 18 months, because we've had to stay home and we've had to upend our lives in such different ways that it's really caused us to really question, well, was I really doing what I wanted to do, or was it worth my time? And I think you're just a great example of somebody who's done that. And I think that's why you have all these people leaving jobs and not going back to them, because they decided, you know what, not for me. I'm not going to do that anymore. My time is more valuable someplace else. And so I think that's exactly, and by the way, I would encourage other people to continue to do that for themselves and make those choices, because there's great stuff out there. The world is a wonderful place if you choose to engage. So,
and don't wait till you get the heart attack. So.
Exactly. Before.
Chris, you were going to say something, I think.
Dude.
No, I'm just agreeing. I love that, because that's such a great, very poignant thing to say, is the return on time. I think I think that through all of this, and obviously through, what Jeffrey's experienced, I think you begin to feel your mortality a lot more. And yes, you begin to really respect time, and because it's the, as everybody says, but it's true, you can never get it back. Once it's spent, it's gone, and that's it. And I think that's a really great outlook to have. And I know you said you don't want to be a downer, Jeffrey, but I actually don't think it's a downer at all. I think it's a wonderful reminder of how how important it is, because that's all we have. How do we use the time we have left? And so I think it's actually a really positive thing. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Time is the resource we don't get back, like everybody has touched on. It's finite. Like you said, once it's gone, it's gone. I actually have a question that ties into Denise and Jeffrey's stories. If you have a story you'd like to share, something along those lines about I phrased it as turning an obstacle into an opportunity. But if you had something like that in your own life and how you were able to possibly reframe it, look at it from a new perspective, have a new appreciation for something, anything like that people watching might find inspirational, or maybe it's something that they might be able to identify with that maybe they've never said to somebody else, or just connects with them on a new level. I would love to hear anything like that.
I mean, I'm happy to share my quick story. Not that I don't want to bogart the mic at all, but I would say, so what happened to me in 2020, like everybody was affected, but and this goes along with what you're saying, Jeffrey, with about time. After 20 years of running a company that I co-founded with my best friend from college, Gray Sky Films, I had the very difficult decision. It was difficult, but yet it wasn't. I went through all the process, but I decided I wanted to leave a company I poured my heart, sweat, tears, blood, everything into, to start something new, because honestly, at the end of the day, I just wasn't happy anymore doing that. I wanted to do something else. I felt a different pull. And what I'm doing now is Rocket was something I kept saying, I'll do it in 10 years from now. I'll do it when I retire from Gray Sky. I'll do it later. And quite honestly, that was the thing. I just said, why am I really waiting? I've done 20 years. I'm ready to I'm ready to move on. Like, I know I built this. This is great. It's here. My business partner, he wants to keep it going. Great. Like, God bless. I want you to keep it going. But I was ready to move on. And so I made the decision to do that. And it was hard. It was really difficult. But ultimately, at the end of the day, once I did it, I immediately felt like a new person. I felt completely re-energized in every way possible, even more creative than I even felt before. Like, everything kind of like started coming out. And so for me, it was very, very important that I did it. And where I go now, and where the roads lead, and the opportunities, like, because I'm doing this, are, I don't know. I'm actually, this whole year for me, this whole year and a half has been an amazing journey of things I've never explored, or haven't explored about myself, or things that I'm capable of in a very, very, very long time. And it's been a process of self-discovery and renewal. And so that's what I think if anybody gets anything out of that story, it's that it's hard to make the change. It's not always easy, but if it's something you feel you have to do in your heart of heart, because it's going to be a thing that makes you happy, that's the key word, it's going to make you happy, then you should absolutely do it. And going back to what Jeffrey said, time is precious, right? So, no better than the present to make something happen. So that's a quick bit about my similar kind of experience with time, and not waiting, and moving on, and just going for it and all that. That's me.
I think that you never know who you're going to affect, who you're going to touch. I do the podcast. I wrote the book. I've taught seminars, and I've traveled, and I've mentored students, but you don't know what you're doing. And I always believe you can either help build the world or tear it down. Mm-hmm. So I've always tried to come from an angle of really helping people and being kind of that beacon of hope or light that I always wanted when I was an up and coming screenwriter. So I got a email, which then ended up in a phone call from a mother who told me her son, who was autistic, failed out of film school, and he always wanted to be a screenwriter. He failed out of it, and they couldn't teach him. So a friend of their family recommended my book. She got the book. He read the book and started writing the screenplay after that. She read the book and started co-writing it with him. And she called me up, and she was in tears because she was able to work with her son in a capacity that they had never done before. And it just like, it hits you. And it's just like that one thing, if I never hear anything else from anybody ever again about that, that's all I needed, because I got to touch that person's life in a special way. And it just feels good. It just feels right. And so that's what I would say is you just, when you're out there and you're doing your thing, you don't know who you're affecting, but you are affecting someone. And it's just, how are you doing it? So that's my moment.
That's very, very powerful. It's so special when you can have an impact on people. And, that's really why we started You Can Choose, the organization that we founded 5 or 6 years ago, is because I used to suffer tremendously from depression. I used to have a hard time getting up in the morning and talking to people and doing all that stuff because I continually beat myself up. That's just the way that I was raised or the way that I learned to live. And it was, even though we were running a software company, I was, we're Silicon Valley, successful people. On the outside, that's what it looked like, but inside it was just completely broken. And I just had this revelation that what I think about matters, and that I can choose what I think about. And that to me was like the dam broke open, that I have the ability to make a difference in my life. And I've made a difference in my life, and I was where I was because of what I was thinking and the words that I had going about me. And this is something that just had a transformational impact on me. And I wanted to make sure that I had the ability to tap people on the shoulder and say, you can choose, right? You don't have to do this to yourself. You can be your best friend. You can empower yourself. You don't have to disempower yourself and say how stupid you are and what bad decisions you've made and go over and over and over again. So to us, that was really the message. And we do, not quite the scope that you have, Jeffrey, but we do have seminars. We do have weekly meetings with folks. And they come to us and they say, oh my gosh, you've made such a big difference in our lives because you've helped us to become empowered and realize that, yes, we can choose. And just that little phrase, you can choose, has just been monumentally impactful for me and for so many people that we touched.
And I want to expand on that a little bit. Was trying not to cry with that story. Thank you, Jeffrey, for sharing that. My sister's on the spectrum, and I've worked with kids on the spectrum for a long time. And so that means a lot to me. I don't like crying in front of people unless I'm on stage and it feels fine. And I'm working on it with my therapist. Don't worry. But thank you for sharing that. That really, thank you. That meant a lot. I want to expand on, we've talked now a few times about being your own best friend, and what does that mean to you? What does that look like to you? I lost my best friend of 20 years this year. So there has been a bit of a shift with relying less on that person and more on myself with a lot of things. And that has been very interesting. It was something I never thought would happen, but I think a lot of us have experienced loss the last few years in different ways. But I would love to hear about what that means to you, because we've talked about it a few times, but for somebody who's watching, they may not really understand what that means or really understand what it means to us specifically and how we apply that in our meeting tonight.
You want to say something? Being your best friend?
Oh, well, I mean, you will live a much better life if you are your own best friend, I guess. I think, again, I'm not exactly sure what you were asking or saying, Bonnie. That's why I'm.
Oh yeah, I was emotional, but.
No. I was just trying to understand.
Well, what does being your best friend mean, right?
Yeah, what does that mean to you and how you've applied that to your own life or your business? How does that, especially with everything happening right now, in these, I'm not going to say unprecedented times, but, I just did. But I think that sort of thing can really help a lot when things kind of feel upside down. So what does that mean to you in your life and your business?
So I'll just say the time that Peter was working through this, I had no experience with depression in my life. I just was like, come on, I've always been very motivated. I've had perhaps too much drive, arguably, but trying to understand the whole issue around depression was a challenge for me. And so I had to step back and say, okay, Beth, you don't know this. You don't know what's going on. You just need to you still love this guy. He's as frustrated as you are with him. You just have to step back and see how you can support and learn and listen. And so for me, if I look at being your own best friend, in that moment with my frustration, it was actually years, not moments, but in that time frame, I had to learn how to step back from who I thought I was supposed to be and trust myself in learning to listen, and that I was capable of doing that, because, well, frankly, I probably wasn't the best listener for a lot of years in there. And so it was really trusting myself. It was stepping back and saying, okay, Beth, you're good at lots of things, but you're not good at everything. You need to kind of appreciate that you need to learn and not know and just let go. And that was a difficult process for a person who is a driver, a pusher, and I would argue an A++ kind of person. I now have downgraded myself to an A-. I'm really good at the B+, but learning how to trust myself and believe in myself and let go of controlling and driving everything, that was a really challenging time for me. Very much, I would argue, in the line on the other end of not knowing at all where you're going and being confused and just having too much stuff coming at you. I don't think they're any different. It's just one's a little bit more of stepping back from that, and the other one is moving forward and being okay with the ambiguity and such. And so I think that's, I think, Chris, you had mentioned it, that we're here living our life, and the experiences we have are really important learnings. They're not failures, they're not bad things, they're learnings. And being your own best friend is a very big part of learning and trusting yourself and moving forward in a good, productive, effective, self-supporting way. Massages are a really good part of that for me, so.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, Beth. I think that with I love the term of being your own best friend. I think it's great. It's a very positive way to look at it. And the thing I work on most, or I guess the thing that comes up most when I'm working with people, whether it's in the group or one-to-ones and all that, is there is a lot of, and I think this is not that this is inherent to just a certain profession, but I think a lot in creative professional world, there's a tendency to, suppress certain aspects of yourself, because you as a person feel like you're going to be perceived differently because, for whatever reason, you're just not 100% sure of how people are going to, but it's really, at the end of the day, it winds up becoming, it's just something you've constructed in your own mind of things to embrace about yourself. And I've gone through this many years and it's not something that you stop doing overnight, but it is something you can begin to work on in your own way. And what I'm saying by that is, and you can call it by a million different things, personal branding or, being authentic or, all whatever word it is. But at the end of the day, it's really just all about being yourself and leaning on the things about you that make you who you are and treating them as the strengths that they are, and not looking at them as weaknesses anymore. And I work on that with a lot of people, because it is, and it's something that I have fallen victim to that. I mean, like talking about, here we were talking about Star Wars before we came on, but I mean, honestly, that's a thing that I used to not talk about with people years ago, because I felt like people were going to think I was a complete nerd and geek, and no one was going to take me seriously because they found out I read comics and listen to and watch Star Wars, and then also listen to like punk and hardcore and metal music, and just thought I would be like some kind of weirdo. Like, how could I do business with this person? Or, and that was what was in my head. And the opposite of it was what was true, was that when I started talking about those things is when I started, having more of the right conversations with the right kinds of people that I actually wanted to have relationships with or do business with or whatever it is. And I learned that. And it was a process, but I think that is when you talk about being your own best friend, I think that's really what it is begin to aspect those parts of yourself that you may feel like are weaknesses, but in all honesty, they're really not. They're total strengths. And so I say embrace them and step into them, you know? That's kind of how I would, you know, kind of what you guys were talking about. It's how I sort of perceive it, you know. So yeah, that's some little bit of advice there.
Love it. We found a way to talk about Star Wars, like we said we would.
He beat me
Challenge
to
accepted.
it, man.
Yep. Fantastic. Jeffrey, were you about to say something?
Oh yeah, Chris beat me to it, man. I was going to throw some.
Sorry,
no,
Jeffrey.
Right.
I was like, you know, it's just.
I'll owe you $5.
No,
No,
you got the DC comic thing going there too, right? I just noticed.
Superman sweater, yeah.
oh yeah. I'm all about the archetypes of heroes over here. So yeah, being the best friend for me is finding the qualities in my best friends that I emulate. I mean, and I don't believe in one best friend. I mean, my wife is my best friend, but then I have best dude friends. I have, you know, best friends all over the place. And it's finding an aspect about them that I can bring into myself, like my wife she just loves who she is, you know? And so, and it's accepting those aspects of me and being like, yeah, it's okay to be like super dorky. Just own it, dude. You know, like Chris is saying. So, I mean, that's I totally get it.
By the way, there's a lot of business people that are just like that, Chris.
Super dorky.
So you know.
Yeah, no, I know. It's not just limited to creative professionals at all. I know there's plenty of business folks I know who are still working on just revealing that they have a tattoo on their arm. You know, so it's like
Well, I think it's wonderful what you said, Chris, is that once you started to embrace who you are, other people, you could connect to other people better, right? And that just goes goes to show you that if you're not who you are, you're never going to meet who they are, right? Because you're going to, I won't say attract, but you're just not going to have that same level of connection with them because you're not who you are, and they feel that you're kind of misleading me, so I'm going to kind of mislead you. So it works both ways.
Yeah, it's easy to fall into the trap.
Exactly.
So good for you. That's nice. That's a nice example.
The other thing is you get to be more of who you are,
And love
and you draw people to you that love to be around people like you. And you just, the other ones don't come near you because they're like someplace else, right? So
the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about what kind of energy you put out there, you know, and yeah, people either are with you or they're not, and hey, that's fine because there's something for everybody. That's for sure.
You don't want them all anyway.
No, not at all, and that's okay, and that's okay.
Exactly.
What's that meme that says, let your weirdo light shine so all the other weirdos can find you? Something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the best.
Yep. Absolutely. So we've talked a lot about, you know, the idea of authenticity, which is what we're talking about tonight. But I would love to hear what you have to say about the idea of faking it until you make it.
Oh, yeah.
You feel like you can be authentic to who you are and still fake it until you make it? Do those things not at all play into each other?
No, I think they're relative. So the thing I would say is know your audience. Your audience. If you know who your audience is, and you sometimes have to figure out who they are, you know, then you have a sense as to how much faking until you make it that you need to do. I would argue that you never want to fake it totally. Okay. I think I call it, what's the word I would use? Not imposter. No. When I think of faking it till you make it, I think about you don't tell the full truth. In that, you know, when we were getting started with our software company, we'd of course tell people, of course we could do it. And then we go home and it's like, okay, how are we going to do this? You know, so it was not quite faking it till you make it, but we weren't totally truthful to say, well, we've never done that before. We were just like, sure, we can figure this out. And so
You're still true to yourself.
right, you're true to yourself, but you're not saying everything. And you always have the issue of people sometimes say things that maybe you misinterpret or you interpret differently. So I think that's where you create the opportunity for yourself. Is another way I would put it.
Yeah, I like that actually. I think that is some wise words for sure, because I think that the whole fake it till you make it thing, I think it's definitely a mindset type of thing, and I think it can work for you and against you depending on how you use it. And I like what you said, like know your audience, be focused, know who you want to be in front of, because otherwise it becomes it just becomes you don't want to be a phony, basically. You don't want to be somebody who's just claiming to be somebody else or something else entirely to an audience. And with, like you said, I think it's great to say, hey, I don't know this, but we're going to work together to figure it out. Or you can get the answer to something and be able to have that knowledge to help somebody. But then to just act like the expert on some given topic just to sort of whatever, win business, or I don't know. There's a bunch of things you could call out there, people by that. So I think there's a fine line of the sort of fake it till you make it type of thing. I think you could use it for a lot of good, but in the wrong hands, it could be, not so great.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta create. Oh, Denise, did you want to say something? I don't want to step on you.
Good.
Oh, okay. I have a crazy screenwriting story about faking it till you make it. I have anxiety, so we'll add that to the list of faults that Jeffrey has on top of a heart issue. So the very first time I got nominated for an award for screenwriting, it was a bigger award. It was an elite festival. We were the top 10 were invited to LA to attend a premiere of one of Ron Perlman's films, and we would get to meet Ron Perlman and the red carpet thing, all that stuff. We would get interviewed on the red carpet. So, I had landed. I didn't sleep that night. My blood pressure was through the roof, and I had just got off the plane and went directly to the festival. And so I get ready to go do my interview on the red carpet and bust out the bloodiest nose you have ever seen on the red carpet. I mean, like Tarantino film bad, right? If you can visualize, right? If you can, right? And so I ran into the bathroom because I'm covered in blood, and I'm cleaning it up. And a guy ran into the bathroom and saw this scene of me in a bloodied bathroom. Didn't say a word. I still remember the look on his face. He turned around and just walked out. So he doesn't know what's going on, right? And so I remember looking in the mirror and thinking, because this is when I had first started thinking, okay, I can face this. I can go and do this red carpet interview, or I can go home. I've got a wife and a kid waiting for me. I've got a comfortable life I've created for myself, and that can be it. And this can all end now. And I remember thinking, you know what? I'm here. I'm going to do this. I need to do this, or I'll never be able to really look at myself the same way again. I'll lose respect for myself. So I went out, I cleaned up best I could, and I did the interview. Now, it was a terrible interview. I was awful, but I faked it until I could get to the point to where I was able to really come into myself and find a personality that I could do this and not bust a bloody nose in front of everybody. So I used the fake it till you make it. It's a tool. It's a tool that will get you over that inevitable hump until you can really find your own way. If you're using that tool and you never find yourself and you never discover your own strength, okay, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
I love that. I think it's well said. And it's exactly, used right, it can help you, but put in the wrong hands, it could, work against you. Because I think at the end of the day, right, you still have to deliver.
Well, and then
you have to execute.
And I think what you're saying is you're still true to yourself, right? This is what was important to you.
Right.
So you were faking it in your appearance, but you weren't faking it internally.
No, I just played the character of Jeffrey doing an interview and everyone pretending that they don't see the fact that he had blood on him. So, there was that. And then there was imposter syndrome. Look, guys, I'm a screenwriter. Do you know how many issues we have to deal with in order to get past that? I mean, there's imposter syndrome, there's insecurity, dabble on a little bit of that as well. And you just got this beautiful mix. So yeah, I mean, I had to deal with that, but it got me through it. And then that led me to more interviews, which then led me to people who believed in me, and then led me to people that helped me find my voice. So, I mean, it's amazing looking back and seeing all these little opportunities that happened, that had I made a slightly different decision, I wouldn't be here on this panel with you guys having fun.
Well, and it's a Perlman film, so I'm sure there was some blood involved.
Yeah, and I mean, and you can say not anyone can do an interview, but you did an interview when you were bleeding out on the red carpet.
It was amazing.
Carpet. I mean,
that's red carpet. Good thing. Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
I made a mess of that.
And the real gift that you got out of it was you got a great story to tell now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't really get any worse than that. I mean, that's pretty much bottoming out. So I feel like, okay, yeah, we can go anywhere now.
Well, I think the point you made is that, you went through the experience and it was a challenge for you, but you moved forward, you went through it, and you learned a lot, and you made connections. And I think, Chris, you talked about, you meet somebody here, if you do something there, it's like you would have never experienced those things. And if you look back at what you could have, the choice you could have made, how does that compare to the choice that you did make? And that's a good example of what I talk about, patting yourself on your own back and recognizing what you've achieved, because that's been some time for you, but every little piece like that makes a difference.
So Bonnie, can you hear us? Your audio back?
Yes. That was incredibly, when you need audio for your job and then to have it go out is only mildly panic inducing. So thank you all so much for for being great. I'm sorry that I missed a lot of that. I will have to watch it on the replay. It is going to be time to wrap up here in a minute, although I want to stay on longer because this has been so much fun with everybody, and I'm just having a really great time, and that has been needed lately. So I just want to, first of all, thank you all for being here and for sharing so much of yourselves with everybody here, and being really vulnerable, sharing a lot of these stories. That I think is a really beautiful thing. So I just want to thank you all for being here and thank everybody watching. But I would love to ask kind of a final question of, it's kind of hard to narrow it down to everything, but what is the biggest piece of advice that you would like to give to people moving forward into the new year? What is something that you've learned that you want to share with everybody moving forward as we apply how to be mindful in our businesses and in our lives? Is there, I know it's kind of a broad question, but something to kind of close us out with, just, knock it out of the park, take us home, sort of a thing going into the new year.
I'll make it quick, but I think that, and this is something I have personally gone through and learned this year, but it's focus. Focus on who you want to be in front of and who you want to be ultimately doing business with, or who you want your audience to be. Just know exactly who they are. I know Beth was talking about that earlier, but for me, that's been key, and it's been a huge learning curve for me as I have gone through it over the last year and a half with this new business. And I feel great going into next year because I feel confident, because I know exactly who I want to be talking to and who I want to be working with. So I'd say that for me would be my one piece.
Focus.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Mine would simply be, what do you want? Answering that question. So,
and then I would add to that is, and why? Why? Because if you get into the why, then you'll understand what 100 times more.
Yeah.
So just so I'm clear, it's why, right? I wasn't sure. That was really vague. I just want to make sure we were all on the same page with that one.
Well, the thing is, because some people say, because if you ask why the same question. You don't ask why the same question. What you do is you ask, I want this. And you say, why do you want that? Because of this. And then you say, well, why that? And then because of this. And, well, why that? Because you have to keep drilling down in those whys to get to what's really at the core of what's important to you. And if it's not important to you, then you're doing something for somebody else. And that's a recipe for disaster.
Or not happiness.
Which is the same thing.
Wise words indeed. That's my only dad joke for tonight. Thanks for the groans. I appreciated that.
I would say stay open, cultivate an openness to possibility, do things that will open you up, like rather than like if you're blocked or something like that, find ways of putting yourself in the way of new opportunities or new possibilities or new ways of looking at things, and then just be kind to yourself.
I mean, you guys are hard to follow.
That's why we
trying to have like
first.
sage-like advice over here. You guys are just like killing it. Honestly, who are you surrounding yourself with? That's really what I focus on. Finding the tribe and defining the tribe. And then once I'm there, building them up too. I mean, the rising sea lifts all boats. I think I just butchered that. Don't tell anybody, but I think you get what I'm saying. I am a writer, I swear. So that's my 2 cents.
I love that. I love it. Build a strong community around yourself. It's great.
I think that's really important, especially with everything happening. We're together, we're not back and forth, but if you can find people, like find your weirdos, right? If you can find your people, especially if it's something like this where we're all meeting on Zoom and webinars, I think that's really, really important. You don't go into the Millennium Falcon alone, right?
You need a co-pilot. You got to have a co-pilot to fly the Millennium Falcon.
I will be anybody's Chewbacca.
I was gonna say I'm too short to be Chewbacca and too short to be a stormtrooper, so that wouldn't work for me. But great, we've got Chewie on deck. So
I see what you did there.
Yeah, you're welcome. I have Princess Leia stuff back there. I almost said I know, but I just met you, so I'm not making that joke. Oh my goodness. One last question. How can people best connect with you if they want to, chat with you after, I was going to say after class, if they want to chat with you after the webinar and talk with you about your services or, do some networking, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Should we put the link in the chat? Would that be helpful?
I think links in the chat would be great. You can also, if somebody's in the middle of, doing dishes or something and they can't go jump to the chat beforehand, if you want to give us your social media handle, if that's your thing or anything like that, that would be awesome. Sure.
Yeah, you can hit me up at ScreenwriterPod on Twitter if you guys want to chat screenwriting and story and stuff like that. You can go to thesuccessfulscreenwriter.com where you can find my podcast.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, link is in the chat, but you can always connect with me on pretty much I'm easy to find on all social media. Just go to Chris Vaglio, or I've even made it easier for people. If you text the word Let's Rock to 88500, you can immediately get connected with me and get all my contact info. So just the words Let's Rock, no spaces, to 88500.
And the way to reach us is just youcanchoose.info. That's a little bit about who we are and what some of the coaching work that we do if people are interested. There's also a newsletter that we send out once a week. That's just a real short, brief post that we then talk about on our community calls on Tuesday evenings. So all free.
I'm at Instagram at D Powers Film, and I'm on LinkedIn under my name. There's probably more than one of my name, but I look like me. And I've got a website that's kind of not up to date, but it's getting there. That'll be on the resolutions. How's that? And what else? Oh yeah, I'm on Twitter, but I fear Twitter, so I don't actually tweet. But you could follow me and see if someday I tweet.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Well, I will be connecting with all of you as well, because once you find your weirdos, you keep them close or 6 feet apart as we're doing right now. But thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thank you all for watching and, I was going to say tuning in, but thanks to everybody who came tonight. And, Happy New Year, Happy 2022, and may the force be with you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
All
Love
right.
Enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
You might be looking at Shoot Stop Video and thinking, so how does this all work? Is this about A, setting up the whole crew for me, B, just giving me options and having me handle it, or C, something in between? Well, it's D, all of the above. To put it simply, we're here to help you in any way that we can to get the crew and talent you need for your next production. We believe that every level of video production can benefit from a well-maintained list of qualified crew members for every position. This goes for pre-pro, on-set, and for post. Every project is different, so if you need a producer to help manage the decision-making process, then we can totally do that. If you're already a producer and want to build your own crew from scratch, then go for it. We're here to make your next production a success. And if you are crew or talent looking for producers that want you, then you've come to the right place. Sign up now, and also leave a referral for any solid people that you know that are already on here. Thank you for considering Shoot Stop Video, and happy shooting!